Welcome to episode 4 of Do Ghosts Be Real. Today we're going to talk about my absolute favorite subject. And this one's been a long time coming. I mean, I've been getting sent creepy fucking dolls on Instagram ever since I said, you know what? I hate the idea of haunted dolls. I hate the idea of dolls.
Of course I got to mess with you, right?
Of course. Like, I appreciate the feedback and, actually responding to what I'm posting, but I really hate the dolls.
So keep them coming, is what we're saying.
I mean, if you want, but, like, I might not... See, I'm always concerned because whenever anyone sends me anything via Instagram, it always goes, show photo. Is it going to be a doll or is it going to be a picture of a penis? We're not too sure.
Oh, no.
And it's very upsetting.
The age-old question, haunted doll or dick pic?
I prefer the haunted doll, I think, honestly.
I don't know. That's actually a toss-up. I don't really want either of those things on my messages.
But that being said, like, some of the dolls I've been sent are pretty terrifying.
Some of the dolls that I researched for this are pretty terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
I gotta be honest. I didn't know that much about dolls before this. I did a bunch of research for this, and some of the shit I found was genuinely unsettling. There are weird stories going back hundreds of years, corroborated by multiple people across different generations. Like, this is a weird phenomenon.
And you guys laughed at me for being like, I think dolls are creepy.
I mean, you're not alone, man. Like, I've always thought dolls are creepy, and I actually did some research into why dolls are creepy, and there's some interesting stuff there. But Spencer, it looks like you have something that you're bursting at the seams to say.
Bust it out,
boy,
baby.
You know what? I think I just have a goofy ass look on my face. If I'm being entirely honest, I'm a little bit lower energy than usual today.
That's okay.
To be entirely real with the listening and viewing audience, last night we may have stayed up a little bit later than we should have, trying to get ready for this. But
we had a good night. We watched the second Annabelle movie.
Yeah, the second Annabelle movie.
Yeah. Oh, what a masterpiece that is!
Yeah.
You got to. I was sitting next to somebody, and they told me you were physically shaking during the entire thing.
Brett had a tough time.
It was tough.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm so disappointed I missed that. I bailed a little bit early, which was still, like, relatively late, but I bailed early on in any case. But yeah, this episode, so do we want to get into, like, a bit about the history of dolls before we get into that?
Let's do it.
Yeah. So, dolls are the earliest known toys made by humans. Archaeologists have unearthed dolls from all over the world, dating back as early as 15,000 BCE.
That's bonkers.
So that's pretty crazy.
And when you have toys that are that old, you're going to have some spooky stories. If you have anything that's that old, you're going to have some weird and unexplained phenomena. I think, honestly, this subject is probably... I struggle to say maybe the most I don't know. This might have the weirdest stuff attached to it of anything that we've actually looked into yet.
Anything that we've looked in so far, there's something I want to talk about in the future that I think is a little more unsettling, but this one so far is probably the creepiest thing that I've looked up.
And I sent you guys a new top 5 video of top 5 moving dolls, which will be posted in the description. So
Perfect.
People will be able to check it out, and I see that shit, and I'm like,
you guys hear the air conditioner in this episode? It's hotter than it's hotter than the heck out today. So it is what it is, and we do deeply apologize, but comfort is king at some point.
Oh, for sure. I mean, to be fair, we will be cutting out a large section of it, but hey,
but you might hear some of it. Anyway,
go ahead.
I see that you have something to say.
No, it's all good. So dolls have had significance for a long time, like not just as children's playthings, but also in like religious and spiritual ceremonies. If you go back all the way to like Greek and Roman society, they would use dolls in religious ceremonies. When children came of age, they had to sacrifice their dolls to a god of their choice, and
that's wild.
They would leave those dolls at their chosen pantheon, and it was seen as like a coming of age of giving up their childhood fantasy, sort of. You know?
You know what? And people look at me and say, "Hey, there's nothing creepy about dolls." When people are sacrificing them in ancient times, they're creepy.
And they've been used in other ways too, like in actual sacrifice, like as effigies. People seem to think like like the common one is voodoo dolls,
Right?
but this is, and that's African culture, but this transcends one single culture. Like in African, Native American, and European cultures, dolls has been used as effigies of sacrifice and as ways to to mess with other people.
And
like,
you know what?
This is a common thing, actually.
I'm going to tell you the story of why I'm so uncomfortable around dolls.
Yeah, lay it on us, man.
So when I was a kid, my grandparents lived in a relatively, I wouldn't say old farmhouse because they built it themselves kind of thing,
Sure.
but, it was built in the late 50s, early 60s kind of deal.
Yeah, yeah.
And they had a bunch of dolls because, my mom and her siblings growing up, they all had dolls. And, it's like all those older dolls are very unsettling looking. Like, they're very creepy looking.
Like our two pals on the shelf over
Yeah.
here?
The difference is these were the first ones that could, like, blink.
Oh, no. That's no good.
So they were already, like, kind of gimpy looking.
Yeah.
Is that the ones where you lay them down?
Yeah,
and
and you lay them down and their eyes closed.
Oh, yeah. Fuck
So,
all that.
like, when I was a young boy, there was one room in the basement I aptly deemed the doll room.
Okay.
Because there was just, like, 10 dolls in there. There was so many dolls. And anytime I ever went in there, I always felt uncomfortable. And maybe it's just my dumb kid imagination, but, like, I would see, like, their eyes move on their own and their limbs move and stuff like that. And maybe I'm just, like, over exaggerating it as a child, but it just scared the hell out of me. And, like, to this day, they got rid of the dolls. I still can't go into that room because it makes me so uncomfortable. And it's in the basement, so it's nice and cold. So it's just like, do I want to be uncomfortable or do I want to...
I'm assuming this farmhouse probably doesn't have central air in it.
It does.
Oh, it does?
Oh, it does.
Okay.
It does.
It just gets real hot out there on the tundra, baby.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Oh, man. Well, that fear of dolls, like, looking at you and stuff like that was something that we encountered a lot. Like, the various stories all throughout this, like, have a lot of eyes following, limbs moving, all kinds of stuff like that. There's actually a name for the fear of dolls.
Yes.
And it's pediophobia.
Yep.
Which, fun fact,
I was gonna say, I thought you said fun fact. I have that.
Yeah.
Probably.
You guys have. See,
Yeah.
I don't really suffer from that. It really doesn't bug me all that much. But looking into all these dolls, I got to admit that some of them are really quite unsettling.
For me too, it's just like that uncanny valley. Like especially if they're hyper realistic, it's just like they kind of look like people, but in your head something's off about them, so they make you just so uncomfortable.
And people look for emotional cues in faces.
Exactly, and
when you don't have those emotional cues, but it has everything else that a human face should have, but it just blankly stares at you.
That's downright spooky.
Oh yeah, it totally is unsettling. Like it activates your flight response. Like
we should just change the name of this episode to "Do Dolls Be Real" because they're terrifying. I know there's real dolls, but that's a different thing.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
That's for another episode.
Speaking of like weirdly real dolls, though, I found this weird thing called reborn dolls.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I've seen a little bit of that.
Please tell me.
So reborn dolls aim
You're not
going to
like this.
You're going to hate this, Brett. Reborn dolls aim to be as realistic as physically possible.
My friend's mom has one of those. It looks like a newborn child.
Yeah, they look like newborns.
It is terrifying.
They breathe. They have heartbeats.
Oh no,
that's bizarre. Because they're supposed
eyes
to be
move.
A therapy thing.
Yeah, it's for dealing with loss.
No.
Like if you miscarry or your infant baby dies,
I
having one of
hate
these
this.
like reborn dolls it's a way to deal with the pain of loss. But they're so weird.
Simon, this is literally the most uncomfortable thing
You want
we
to be
have
even
ever
more
talked
uncomfortable?
about.
Some people collect these.
Oh
they
my
don't
goodness.
just have them for like therapy reasons.
Yeah.
They collect them, and I will say that
I
it's
know one
almost
person.
exclusively women who collect these reborn
I believe
dolls.
that.
And like a lot of like doll collection is not necessarily a weird thing. Lots of people do it.
Absolutely.
both men and women.
Oh, of
it definitely
course.
tends to be more of a female thing for things like porcelain dolls and antique dolls. But like this reborn doll thing, that creeps me out. Like that's a little weird.
It's too much, and I understand like the therapeutic purposes of it, but like it is upsetting.
Oh yeah,
regardless.
and we're not the only people to think this. In
thank
2013, a psychologist named Frank Andrew at Knox College in Illinois and a graduate student of his named Sarah, I'm going to mispronounce this, Kohinke? I don't know. But
who's to say?
But they put out a paper on their working hypothesis of what creepiness means. and they did a survey of 1,300 people. And most people that they surveyed said that collecting dolls was one of the creepiest hobbies that you could have.
It totally is.
Yeah. And they also, in that survey, they realized that people who collect these dolls don't realize that they're creepy.
That is weird. You know what, though? Like, a lot of different types of collections could be creepy.
Yeah, it just depends on your personal feelings on it, right?
Okay, I'll put it to you this way, guys. I'm the only single one out of the three of us.
Sure.
If I went to a woman's house and there was dolls everywhere, I don't care how attractive or how much we connect on a spiritual level, I'm leaving immediately.
So for potential ladies looking for Brett, dolls are a deal breaker.
If you have them, just like tuck them away somewhere.
If you're just looking to spook Brett, though, you could just fill your house with dolls and hit him up.
I do not like that at all.
Like that episode of Family Guy where they run into someone's house and it's just full of dolphins and everyone's just like, whoa.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot. Like one or two, I can deal. I mean, we have these two lovely ladies who haunt my nightmares, but I can deal.
Yep.
Let's get into some of the famous haunted dolls because I know there are so many, and I know you guys have tons.
There are a real multitude of them, actually.
There's a lot. But just before we get into that, I want to say one more thing. Did you know that people treat the fear of dolls, this pediophobia, they treat it with exposure therapy?
Oh, boy.
Let's say that you are a child who hates dolls. Your psychologist is going to start making you interact with dolls.
Are you telling me that I should...
perhaps a 27-year-old man?
Yeah.
Are you saying that I should fill this set with more dolls each week so that Brett gets more comfortable with them? And then he's no longer afraid of them and it's actually a therapeutic thing and I'm not being a jackass?
Are we just... turning into a doll podcast now? Or...
Yeah, welcome to the Doll Hour.
Where Brett just wants to scream and cry every episode.
Yeah.
Welcome to bringing Brett closer to the brink. I'm Spencer.
So I do really want to talk about this famous creepy dolls, but that's going to be like the meat of this show, I think. But just before we get into it, there are a couple things that I wanted to say. So dolls have evolved a lot over the years, but they've been around a long time. So, like, the Native Americans made corn husk dolls, and I gotta say, they looked creepy as hell. If you're listening to this, Google Native American corn husk doll. It will give you nightmares.
I didn't see any of those ones.
They're a little freaky looking.
I'll put it in all honesty to the beautiful listeners out there. I did not research this at all because I knew if I did, I would not be sleeping. So
I'm thankful.
letting these boys carry, and I'm just all pure emotion this episode.
And if anybody's actually been listening to the episode rather than just putting it on and letting it roll, Simon's been really carrying it. So I'm really happy that he's got a real base of knowledge on this. I thought
that's good.
But anyway, so corn husk dolls are wild.
So they made these corn husk dolls, and there are other creepy dolls too. Like if you go back, let's say in 1982, developers in Titus, Florida, found a 7,000-year-old grave of a Native American girl, and she had a stone doll with her with like a face carved into it. Which, like, I mean, it was just a children's plaything, but it definitely looked a little creepy. It was a bit unsettling, but. The farther you go back, the more basic these toys get. Going all the way back to, like around 10,000 years ago, they would have predominantly been made out of wood. But as you start to evolve, as society starts to evolve, the dolls got more complex.
Right.
And, if you go back to like a Native American society, children had a role in society. They weren't just children. They contributed to the survival of the species. So their toys were very basic. But as we approach the 18th and 19th century, dolls became much more luxurious and more of a plaything, and they hold large significance. They started to become made out of porcelain, things like leather and glass. In the 20th century, they became made out of plastic, and that's when they really start to hit the uncanny valley, where they start to really look like a human, but without any emotions. But if we go back even as far as 500 BC in Rome, they had dolls with moving appendages. Like they had dolls that you could pose. They had
cool.
Clothing.
They've always mattered very deeply to us.
As much as I don't like them, that is pretty cool to know.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy.
This isn't a new thing.
It's really not.
It's really not.
And they have huge cultural significance. They serve as a means of instruction for children, and they reinforce gender norms and social behavior. and they're a subject of cultural projection, is what I would call it. So
Right.
you, like, let's say it's like the 50s, you would give your little boy like a construction worker doll, and you'd give your
or a
little girl
super
action
cool
figure.
gun.
yeah,
Action
exactly.
figure,
Action figure.
please.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a
He's
difference.
got some weapon accessories,
Yeah.
whereas the girl doll,
Exactly.
probably
Yeah, like-
has an apron.
Exactly, like G.I. Joe
Right.
is like, I would say that's a cultural projection.
G.I. Joe versus Barbie.
Exactly.
Yeah, more or less.
And just as a total interject here, if you guys are listening to this, if you haven't seen it, check out The Toys That Made Us.
Yeah,
It does rock.
I did
That's
watch
super
it. Yeah.
fun.
It is very cool. If you're interested at all in toys and dolls and that sort of thing, very cool. Not so spooky, but it's very cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not spooky at all, unless
yeah.
you're very much spooked by all children's
So,
toys.
so let's see. So before the 19th century, dolls were much more basic. They became much more, I would say, angelic and
Yeah.
a little more like
Cherubic.
cherubic. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good word. Yep. And,
Which honestly, if you actually look like cherubs, if you actually look at the description of them, like in the Bible, they are terrifying.
Are we getting into biblically accurate angels?
It's literally
Simon,
only
are you familiar with
because
biblically accurate angels?
they are
a little bit.
terrifying.
They are terrifying.
Like cherubs do not look like babies.
If
They
there's-
are three-headed monsters.
If there's a candidate for aliens, it's them.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to say is I did some research into why we think dolls are unsettling, and they're unsettling in two ways. It's almost like a spectrum. On the one side, you have dolls that closely resemble humans and trigger your uncanny valley response, where things are like not quite right.
That's why I'm so
Right.
uncomfortable.
And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have things like in ancient history, they would make rag dolls. The Romans would make, if you were a poor peasant, you might make your child a papyrus doll. It would be like a cloth sack,
Right.
with filled with paper basically, and those are also terrifying. They look like freaky scarecrows that you do not if you're getting up to go to the bathroom at 3 a.m, you do not want to run into that thing.
Do you think that's is it just because they still resemble us? So there's something very frightening about it crossing the uncanny valley, but there's also something very frightening about it not coming anywhere near close, but still having a human
I think
form.
that almost seems otherworldly.
I
Right.
still have the same reaction, the same visceral reaction to a scarecrow.
Sure.
It still makes, because it's human like.
Yeah, it's
and I think
humanoid,
it's
but
that
different.
human likeness.
So you're just
that
walking
makes me-
through the mall seeing mannequins and flipping out.
I've never been a fan of mannequins,
fair
but that's
enough.
probably because I watched that horror movie way back in the day where mannequins come to life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I don't know if I'm
I
familiar
can't
with
remember.
that one.
Yeah.
I can't. It was
I know
either a
there's a-
show or there's something where mannequins came to life and killed people, more or less.
Man,
So-
that is spooky.
So I'm not a huge fan of mannequins. I mean,
I found
anything
that.
that resembles us that isn't us makes me very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's the same with this is a total nerd thing, video game AI. When the people are too realistic, they look like us, but there's no soul. I think
Yeah.
that's the problem. It's the lack of
Yeah,
human
that and their tongues
spirit.
ain't right. Yeah, we're having real difficulties with tongues.
Tongues and hair.
Some facial
Tough.
animations.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
struggling. I also found one other thing that seems to resonate across the scale of creepiness, and that's decay. When you have
Yeah.
decaying
Yes.
humanoid dolls,
Yes.
it's weird. And if you watch horror movies about possessed dolls or this sort of thing, they always have one thing in common, and that is decay.
That's a very, very astute observation,
Well-
because they're never good out of the box. The only one that I can think of that is brand new out of the box would be Chucky,
But
because Chucky's in good shape to begin with, but he
I would
pretty
call
quickly
that
looks
more
pretty
of a
rough.
slasher flick than a horror movie.
Yeah.
Because I can watch Chucky. It doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah, it's
But- Mm-hmm.
in the realm, but it's a subgenre for sure.
But
So-
even yesterday with our Annabelle adventure,
Yeah.
the doll itself, they make it look very unsettling.
Oh, yeah.
Because there is it looks to be a little decay.
It does.
You know,
and I think that just comes down to our fear of death. If
Yeah.
you look like a baby is cute, but a rotted dead baby
Yeah,
is
that's
not
no
cute.
good.
That's
Adorable.
terrifying. And so if you look at at these like the cases of haunted dolls. In the case of one that we're going to talk about later, Robert the doll, he started off as this, like a new doll. It still looked kind of freaky. It had tiny little beady eyes, and it was freaky. But if you look at pictures of it today, it's downright terrifying because it's worn. It's got chunks out of its face. There's, its eyes are scratched. Like it's just unsettling.
Yeah,
and this is for sure something that I found is that decay takes this to another level.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Like if you've got a candidate for a haunted doll, it's like 100-year-old decaying doll where its hair is like falling out.
So you're saying I got to start going to thrift stores to get really beat up dolls instead of these cute little ones that are all in nice shape.
That
to
spot
make this
in the
spooky.
city here, that shop you sent the picture of their doll, and it looks to be decayed.
Yeah, we've got a kind of like, I guess, mystical store in the city here that claims to have a haunted doll, which would have been lovely to visit before and maybe to chat about, but maybe we can throw up a link to that thing in the description.
Sure.
I know I saw some pictures of that. It's spooky. Allegedly, this doll was in a house fire where the whole family died. Wow. I don't know a whole heck of a lot about it, but it's got that decay thing going on. It's like scorched and kind of wild looking. I think it's a plastic doll. Okay. I'm not 100% sure, but anyway, haunted doll. We should definitely check that out at some point.
That actually sounds terrifying.
Because we can just go there.
Yeah, we should. We should go do that.
It's there.
And that would for sure be an object that would be connected to some traumatic experiences.
And that's the other thing about
some serious energy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's ultimately the thing. Like with cursed, like who's to say if the doll was like cursed beforehand?
Oh boy,
probably not realistically. But if you have a whole family allegedly die,
that's
you might get some
dark energy
some
there.
Very not nice things connecting itself to objects from the house.
And then one more thing I want to say real quick before we dive into the haunted dolls is there's a German writer, and I don't know his full name, but his initials are E.T.A. Hoffman. And in 1816, he published a story called The Sandman. And this seems to be sort of the beginning of haunted dolls in popular culture.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Yeah. So this story was analyzed by Freud and a few other psychologists at the time. And so the general idea is it involves a young man who's been through some trauma. He discovers that the lady he's trying to woo here is in fact a clever wind-up doll.
Ooh,
and it's like possessed.
No.
And
it was very odd.
And it was putting off this like it appeared to him as a beautiful young woman, but it was actually a possessed toy that was messing with him.
Really, really hate that.
Yeah, and it drives him crazy, and I believe he eventually kills himself. And the doll doesn't really have it's not like Chucky where it's like actively murderous. It's sort of like it's got sinister undertones, and instead of being downright threatening, it's more ominous, and it messes with his mind. And this seems to be the sort of the theme of the haunted doll stories up until the 20th century. They seem to be a little more subtle, and a little more, a little freaky without being in your face.
And once we hit the 20th century, we get into the Chuckies who are running around with butcher knives, stabbing each other.
Exactly, they become more actively homicidal. They're really trying to hurt you.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one thing I definitely find interesting, because with most haunted anything, right? Especially with the haunted dolls we're going to be talking about, it's not like they, are running around with intent to harm people, but it's just like little things, like just a hand moving on its own, or them watching you as you see. That's more unsettling to me. If a doll came at me with a weapon, it's like, yeah, I will fuck it up. Like I'm 200 plus pounds. I'll put it through the fucking wall.
Unless it's controlled by a demonic entity.
Right, which we're getting a lot of in this, honestly.
Yeah, that seems to be like even the haunted dolls throughout history. It's not usually like ghost possession from my understanding, but that also being said, like, who's to say if demons are real or not?
Yeah. Well, the accounts of all these different dolls are kind of very mixed. And of course, like, when you're looking into something as wild as haunted dolls, it's not as if you can look up scholarly articles to check this stuff. These are all things corroborated by people throughout history, different generations, and different people with different varying levels of belief. And one of the, I guess, from the movie we watched last night, Annabelle Creation, now that one's not exactly based on the, I guess, true Annabelle story as told by the Warrens.
Yeah, not exactly.
But
I took some creative liberties with that.
I know that the
Very
Warrens,
creative.
though, were under the impression that because the actual Annabelle doll is a Raggedy Ann rag doll, which were very,
Yes.
very, very popular at that period of time, and it was like given to a young nursing student. In any case, like, so what exactly happened with this doll? They put it in. This nursing student lived in an apartment with another nursing student, and.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I actually didn't get too far
Okay.
in that story. I think you might have to.
I
Take
think
the
you
lead
know
on
what
this
I
one,
can take this one then. In that
Yeah,
case.
because I know kind of the backstory a little bit, but nothing too crazy.
Yeah.
So you might need to like.
Hopefully nobody's if you're watching this or listening to this and just screaming at it because of all of my wild inaccuracies because you're a huge fan of the Annabelle story, I apologize. But
Well, you know what? We do have an email, so if you're
yeah,
mad
let
about
us know.
it,
Please send us a very angry email
And
if you're ticked off.
If we're wrong enough, we'll maybe do a correction at some time.
Yeah, who's to
probably
say?
not. I'm not going to visit haunted dolls ever again.
But
You can't make me.
this Annabelle doll. So I think it was supposed to be like a quirky kind of playful birthday gift for I think a lady named Deidre. Now the names are kind of disputed through history whether it was a Donna or a Deidre. But she lived in an apartment building with another young lady. They were both nursing students, and the other young lady had a boyfriend who I guess had also lived there with them. Sure. But apparently this rag doll would be left on the bed, and Deidre would like leave it in one position, she'd come back, and its legs would be crossed, or its arms would be crossed, or it would appear to be pointing at something. And this was kind of an odd thing that was going on. It continued to go on for a while, but it was like mostly innocuous stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything particularly like it was spooky, but it was very clear that nobody was going to be harmed by this doll.
Right.
And from what I understand, they actually invited a clairvoyant into this house, and this wasn't anybody to do with the Warrens. This was a different person.
Okay.
Some sort of a psychic medium.
Okay.
Now, wherever you fall with your level of belief on that, who's to say? But apparently this medium made contact with the spirit of supposedly a 7-year-old girl named Annabelle who'd been playing in the fields where this apartment complex was put up. And as this girl had passed away, and as time had gone on, her restless spirit still was there, and it was kind of like wandering the halls of the apartment building. And considering the fact that this was mostly mature individuals and adults living there weren't any kids to play with or anything like that. So when this lady brought this kind of sweet looking doll into her house, she just immediately like started manipulating the doll.
She wanted to play with it. She latched onto it.
And the two young ladies who lived in this apartment were supposedly so touched by this story. This Annabelle character spirit asked if she could inhabit the doll, and they gave her permission to inhabit the doll. Now this is where things start to get wild.
Never give damn permission.
That may have been a mistake.
That is just you know what? Let things pass on if they need to, because like
you can't be letting things in.
You can't be letting things in.
Yeah, in the movie you watched, like Spencer, it sounds like you have the real story here.
Yeah, real story.
Yeah. In the movie, they like it was a little different, but they gave permission as well, and that's like you said, that's when things start to really not go
You know
well.
what, man? Between you and me, I think that might be the only accurate part of the entire Annabelle movie.
Yeah.
Is they gave permission.
Right.
Yeah, in the movie, she didn't, like, I'm not sure how she died in real life, but in the movie, she got hit by a car.
Now,
and that was a violent death.
The real life story of this, as it goes on, actually, is that this wasn't a human spirit at all.
Right.
As time passed forward, more violent, ridiculous things started happening, like scratches started appearing on... she particularly didn't like the one nursing student's boyfriend, and she was, like, hurting him. And one time they came home and there were, like, blood spots on the doll. He was getting scratched. It was appearing in different places. They were hearing, like, kind of, like, spooky laughing and all kinds of stuff like that. Right. And I guess the activity just kept amping up and amping up and amping up. And eventually they contacted the church, and somehow or another, I think a priest may have gotten in contact with the Warrens, and the Warrens came over and said, oh, this is, like, not a little girl at all. This is a demonic entity, and had you let this go on for another 2 weeks, you guys would have all surely been dead. Yeah. And so they came in, and, like, the Warrens, their credibility has been greatly checked over the last little while, because, of course... they're very famous for a lot of things. One thing being the whole Conjuring series, which includes the Annabelle movies, The Nun,
Yep.
And it's continuing on. They just had a new one this year.
Yeah.
The Conjuring 3.
I still haven't seen that.
It's fun. It's not the threads don't they don't tie everything together as well as they have in the past. I think it's coming a little bit undone, but
the thing that really strikes me is like how would they know that if you let this happen for another 2 weeks you would have fuck off.
It's a very sensational story.
Yeah,
and as it turns out, the Warrens owned a very sweet little spooky museum that they ran out of their house, and they also did all kinds of speaking engagements and stuff like that made them money. The big thing is there were no I don't believe there were any other hypotheses checked. Now you could say that this was because of oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank. The wife.
Oh, I don't remember her name.
Oh my goodness.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, because Elizabeth Warren is was a psychic medium or a clairvoyant, so she came and immediately connected with the demonic spirit, but that's been questioned. In any case, they took this dang doll, they did a big cleanse on the house. They did apparently a full-on exorcism with the church of the house and the doll and
apparently
people.
They put the doll in like a case that was supposed to be resistive of.
Well,
this sort of
if
thing.
you see
the wood's supposed to be soaked in holy water.
If you see any haunted doll, especially if it's on display, they all are in fancy cases.
Yeah.
They all have crazy runes etched on them and stuff like that, and a lot of it is the allure of it, right? It's to look cool.
And
but
I believe in this case it's still there, right? I think the Annabelle doll is still in the occult museum.
The thing I find
they both passed away now, but I think they're still running the museum.
Very weird is, like you said, just these scratches and then blood being on the doll and stuff. That is terrifying.
Is bizarre.
What could it be? I don't know, but it still scares the hell out of me.
The big problem is that it could all be entirely fiction, because going back and trying to actually find these people.
Who are these people?
People have really struggled to put a name to these people and to confirm whether these events actually happen. And there's a fantastical story about them coming home afterwards with the doll too.
Oh, really?
Because Deidre gave them the doll and said take this thing out of here.
Right.
And they put the doll in their car, and apparently their brakes went out, the car kept stalling, the power steering wasn't working, all kinds of stuff like that, and they nearly got into car accidents a few times on the way home. And there was even another event because they took the doll there and they had a priest or a reverend or something over, and he picked up the doll and he said to the doll, "Annabelle, you're just a rag doll, you can't hurt anybody." And they told this priest be careful on your drive home. And apparently the story is that he totaled his car on the way home.
What?
And may have been a little bit banged up after that. but the thing about the story is that it's hard to corroborate. There's not a whole lot of information that leads anywhere.
It's still very fun and very terrifying.
It is.
Some
my
of these
god.
other stories might be a little bit more convincing though, and I know you did a lot of research into Robert the doll.
Robert the doll is probably one of the more convincing stories that I've ever heard involving any sort of haunting or possession, especially involving an object.
Right.
It honestly was downright terrifying. Now, I'm sorry, off the top of my head, I don't remember the names of the people involved.
I think boy's name, the boy who owned the doll, was Robert Jean Otto.
Yes, that is correct.
And it was the Otto family.
It was the Otto family, and from what the legend is that this doll was given to him by the maid, but from what I understand, the doll was actually bought by his grandfather.
Yeah.
It's over 110 years old. It was made by the Stief company in Germany. They were a doll company. So his grandpa brought this home, and immediately Robert became enamored with this doll. It was like his best friend. He would take it everywhere with him. If they went to the beach, Robert would be sitting there right beside him. He had a spot for him at the dinner table. He would be, snuggling in bed with him. But almost immediately after this, after they bonded so closely, almost immediately, strange things started to happen.
There were voices and stuff coming from the room, were there not? Allegedly, he was talking to the doll, and the family was hearing lower, gruffer voices. And Jean was a 4-year-old at this point.
I don't like this at all.
So Jean was just a little boy, and he would play with this doll. He would talk to it, the same way that any little boy would. If you're playing with a toy car, he's the doll. He treated it
Like he was his friend.
Yeah, but he also referred to it in the first person in the same way, like, I hate to make another Family Guy reference here, but in the same way that Stewie talks with his doll, Rupert.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
It's the exact same relationship there. So, but immediately, like, very soon, stuff started to go very weird. They would find the doll in random places around the house at times when it wouldn't have made sense for the doll to be there. For instance, Robert, the boy, would be sleeping upstairs, and he took the doll to bed with him. And then he would still be sleeping upstairs, and he'd be sleeping the whole time, and when the parents would come downstairs and find him sitting at the dinner table.
That's frightening.
I don't like that.
Things like that. And like that, like, if especially in an older creaky house, you're going to know when someone's walking around.
You'll know when somebody moves.
Yeah.
Like,
and
my house built in the 1950s, you can hear everything.
Yeah.
You can hear every
Now imagine if that
creak and
house was in
footstep.
Key West, Florida, nice and humid.
Yeah.
And built in the 1800s. Like, everything in an
lovely.
1800s, like any sort of Victorian home, everything creaks, everything
creaks.
bangs, everything
This seems to
screeches.
be a constant thing we
It
go
is.
back to, is Victorian
Victorian
houses
era homes.
just being creepy as
Don't
fuck.
buy one of those, folks.
Do not.
Buy something with a furnace. You can't be having anything with a boiler or radiators.
You know what?
Well, I guess those are tied together. But
As far as I'm concerned, if you buy a house that's over 100 years old, you can go fuck yourself. Like, just go and you buy a nice cookie cutter house in a nice suburb where every house looks the same,
A
and
McMansion.
yeah, exactly, because that shit ain't gonna be haunted.
It's also going to fall apart in 20 years, but we won't get
Whatever.
into that.
We won't.
there's all kinds of wild, like, I just had an interesting, well, maybe not interesting, possibly a crackpot theory.
Okay.
About why one of the of
hear it.
course, Victorian homes crack, bang,
They do.
and screech, but there's all this kind of whether you believe in it or not, there's all kinds of, like, I guess, fervor around the idea of water and how water is supposed to carry spiritual energy a whole heck of a lot more. Now, if you've got a house, you know what? I just actually disproved my theory immediately.
Ooh.
All houses have water pipes going through them. I was just going to say, because, like, radiators have water and stuff
Right.
going through them, maybe they're just spookier because they're better conduits for spooky things.
It's
Anyway,
entirely possible.
back
Who's
to
say?
dolls.
So, like, the family started to notice weird things. Oh, and one thing I should say is that this also seems to be a trope here, is that this family was relatively wealthy. They had, cooks and maids, and the turnover rate at this house was extremely high because everyone who worked there was creeped out by this doll. This is not like a few people saying that this doll was weird. They employed literally hundreds of people.
And weren't they blaming some of the weirdness that was happening with the doll on servants as well? There's that theory too.
There was some denial there that they were saying, like, yep, like this was servants, but there were things that were very hard to explain. So, for, like, what you were saying earlier, Spencer, is this boy who was 4 years old at the time would be, or 4 or 5, something like that. He would be playing in his room, and he would be speaking in a high voice, and then you'd hear like a darker, gruffer voice reply to him. And at one point they asked him what was going on, and he said that he was talking to his doll. And he said that the doll was talking back to him, and they didn't believe him. They thought that it was just his imagination, and that he was just making this up, and that he was the one doing the voice. And they asked him to do the voice once, and he couldn't do it. They asked him to do his roughest impression, and he couldn't do it.
Couldn't do the Robert voice?
It didn't sound like it. There were also other things that happened. The doll's presence became more ominous over time, and things started to break around the house, almost like a child throwing a temper tantrum. But sometimes this happened when the family wasn't home. Like, the boy, Robert, was not there, but things would be broken.
But Robert the doll was still there.
Robert the doll was still there, and the family wasn't. And these are the sorts of things that got blamed on the servants, and the servants, of course, denied everything.
Yeah.
But there was a few incidents where the servants were out, too, and they came home and things were broken.
Jesus Christ.
There were reports from the family and the servants of the doll moving.
And the neighbors,
blinking.
too, from what I understand. There were people saying that they could see the doll looking out, like, moving from window to window, as if it was, like, observing the neighborhood.
Exactly. It would sit in the upstairs windows, and there would be nobody home, and you'd walk by a couple hours later, and it would be in a different window.
I think the thing that terrifies me about this, too, is the fact that, like...
We haven't even started.
Like...
This story is crazy.
Well, the thing that kills me is, like, do they have any explanation of how the doll got haunted? Because they bought it new from a place.
They don't.
Well, there was, like...
So, like,
that's
what...
where the story gets convoluted, because, like, the story, like we know for a fact that this doll was made by this company in Germany. This has been confirmed, but almost like, because I did a bunch of research on this doll as well, and most of the research I did on this doll was saying that a servant made this doll, and that she was from Jamaica and may have been into voodoo or something like that, or possibly that maybe a servant had been scorned or something like that and was into voodoo and left and cursed Robert the doll. But we do know that Robert was made by this German company because there are other examples of this doll. So this was not stitched together by somebody. But that's a good example of, like, you know, how researching the paranormal can be sometimes a little cobbled together.
You have to... Well, every episode we've had things that contradict each other, and we're like, well...
That's part of the fun.
I think a lot of this is oral histories, you know? It's
exactly.
urban legends, and they're not necessarily the most reputable sources, and so they don't get documented in a way like a historical fact would.
With generations of people saying, this doll does some weird things, so leads me to believe that, there's probably something... I mean,
there's got to be something
going
on
here. There's something weird going on here.
Like, there was one incident where Robert was playing in his room and he started to panic. He was freaking out. Everyone in the house who was there attested to this, that it sounded like the boy was screaming, screaming for his life. And there was a huge commotion upstairs, crashing and banging. And when they came upstairs, they ran upstairs and they slammed open the door. And Robert was sitting in the corner with his arms wrapped around his legs, crying. And the doll was sitting on the edge of his bed looking at him. And he said that he didn't put it there, and that the doll was, like, threatening him.
And that furniture, wasn't there some furniture overturned as well?
These were other, in this case, like, furniture got overturned, but that happened regularly, where they would walk into rooms, and it was like a bull ran in there.
The bedding's all ripped off and stuff like that.
And the servants would say that they would, like, make up a room, and then they would go away, and, as far as they know, the boy didn't do it, and they would come back, and like, the bedding had been taken off the bed. Pictures came down off the wall, like, plates were broken, cups were broken.
What's your motive, Robert?
Yeah, no kidding. Hey,
at this point, just burn the doll.
Well, so it's interesting you say that, because as this was going down, Robert's aunt came to stay, and she said, after looking at all these things that had happened, she said that this doll was haunted and they needed to get rid of it. So, listening to her, they boxed Robert up and they put him in the attic. The next night, actually that night, she went to bed and she didn't wake up. She died.
Right.
Yeah.
She had a stroke or something like that.
Robert is a real dick.
Oh, yeah.
I don't like this doll.
This might be the one instance I can find of a haunted doll where people have directly died.
That is crazy.
I hate this.
Whether that be coincidental or not, it is tremendously spooky.
From what I understand, she was in good health. Like, she was elderly, but she was a healthy older woman, and
it shouldn't have happened. There was no explanation.
Yeah, she died very suddenly, and it was after this happened. And this is not the only time when someone has crossed Robert the doll and come to regret it. Yeah. So just before I continue on with this, I just want to say there were a few other incidents where weird things happened. People would hear a child running around and laughing and playing when there were no kids home. They would hear footsteps in the attic. They would hear, like, laughter. They would hear crashing and banging.
Because Robert got put in a box in the attic.
And so that's what happened. So when she died, Robert was up in a box in the attic. And then eventually... Well, actually, not even eventually. Right after this happened, they became scared of this doll. They were scared of the doll to begin with, actually, but they were even more scared of it now. So they gave Robert back his doll, and for a while, it seemed like these incidents stopped.
Oh man!
But they did.
They appeased the doll by bringing him back into everyday life.
But these incidents did continue. But Robert grew up. He didn't play with the dolls much anymore, and these things abated. Robert the doll was put in the attic where he lived for quite a few years. Robert the boy went off and got married. He became a painter. He had a wife. I believe her name was Mary, I think. I might be getting that wrong.
I could not confirm that.
But I think her name was Mary.
Her name was Mary, folks.
Don't get mad at me if that's wrong. But anyways, so eventually, Robert and his wife moved back into their family home. The parents had passed away, and it became their home. And again, almost immediately, weird things started to happen. Initially, the doll was upstairs in the attic,
Yep.
And they maintained that they didn't take the doll out, but one day he was just sitting there.
Ooh.
What the fuck?
Yeah, and so this doll sort of reinserted itself into Robert's life. And it became, still like his close
And Robert
friend.
kind of like willingly did that too, did he not? He like was going around with the doll again.
Yeah, he would bring it around with him. Now, whether that was out of fear or some sort of mental illness or something, I don't know.
Probably a little column A and a little column B, if I'm going to be honest with you.
I think so.
I mean, at that point, like, if this doll is haunted, just
get
into the furnace, man.
Well,
like, get rid of the fucking
that's
thing.
That's the difficult thing about this. Like, I haven't heard anything specifically about attempting to destroy Robert the doll.
They
There are some other dolls on this list that, much like the Necronomicon and Evil Dead, when attempted to burn, did not burn. Like, notably Harold the doll. Did you do any sort of reading on Harold? Anyway, I think this was another. I'm not going to get into it because I don't know a whole heck of a lot. I know. Did you guys watch that? Island of the Dolls Ghost Adventures episode?
Well, not the Ghost Adventures. I watched the BuzzFeed. The BuzzFeed Island of the Dolls.
That's not going to do us any good in this case because the Ghost Adventures guys who a little bit theatrical, I would say. Maybe
it's very fun to watch.
I struggled with it.
They get pretty excited.
They get real excited, and whether the things that they're seeing are real or things that they have staged, who's to say? And I would say that I'm leaning pretty far over to column B on that one.
Right.
But they brought Harold the doll with them, and Harold the doll was this like this very spooky looking burned up super decayed baby doll that apparently like was surrounded by a whole bunch of death and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
But they actually, so the Island of the Dolls, man, am I jumping all over that place? But the Island of the Dolls is like a notable place as well.
Yeah.
Because there are like dolls hung all over the place there.
It's very creepy.
Because an old man named Don Julian lived there.
Okay.
And he had discovered I think in the 50s, he discovered a girl face down in a canal there, and she had drowned. And apparently the story is that a doll had floated up to the surface after she'd passed away.
Oh, boy.
And he took this as a sign that he should abandon his family and move to this island. And he made offerings to this little girl, I guess, to appear. Like, I think he was feeling. The story is that he was feeling all kinds of guilt because he couldn't save her or something like that.
Okay.
So he spent years just hanging dolls all around there.
It's very like, and with weather and stuff, because it's not like they're inside.
Yeah,
they're outside.
They look
they're
horrifying.
weathered
They're all destroyed,
and terrifying.
And there are like it looks like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dolls.
It would be my
there.
nightmare.
Yeah,
it would be
my
place.
personal hell.
Yeah.
Personally.
But anyway, the Ghost Adventures guys got their hands on this other haunted doll, Harold, and they took it to this island with them because this doll is supposed to be like very, very much infested with a bunch of spirits or something like that.
Does not surprise me.
But anyway, they at one point, somebody who owned Harold tried to burn Harold, and Harold allegedly did not burn. So
that's terrifying.
Can't really confirm that,
Yeah.
But I wonder if anybody tried to do that with Robert.
I don't know if anyone tried to do that with Robert.
The thing is, if it was Harold, words are hard, is a pretty old doll, right?
Yeah, Harold was like I think
probably just
19th
stuffed with
century or something.
asbestos.
Yeah,
that's probably what it was. That's why he didn't burn. He was just fireproof.
Made of nothing but fire retardant.
Literally just fireproof,
yeah. Well,
awesome.
I mean, they used it for everything, so it wouldn't surprise me.
Wouldn't surprise me.
But yeah,
I know that they know. I don't think anyone tried to burn Robert the doll, but his wife hated this doll.
Right,
I get it.
And she wanted him to get rid of this. Apparently, because she was trying to separate them, Robert the doll took offense to that and made torturing her his goal.
Ooh.
To the point where she killed herself.
Oh boy,
that's horrifying.
And the people who were close to this cited the doll as the reason. Now, this is not. We're not even done here. Like,
oh my god, it keeps going.
It keeps going. So after everyone involved in this story had passed away, somebody, like another family, bought this home with no knowledge of these events. Mm-hmm. And while they were renovating, they found Robert the doll upstairs in a box. Now, before they found him, they had also... keep in mind, these are people who did not know about this. They were also reporting the same things of crashing and banging when nobody should have been in those rooms, things getting broken, the sounds of a child running around, and childlike laughter. And this is probably one of the more convincing things, because these people had no knowledge of this. This was independently reported. So
if I'm buying a house, when I end up inevitably buying a house, I'm checking every goddamn nook and cranny for dolls. And if there's any dolls in there, nope, it's not happening.
More weird stuff happened with Robert the doll, and eventually they donated him to a museum, but not because they wanted to. They were scared.
They
of
had
this doll.
They needed this doll out of the house.
The last straw. And this is what they're reporting. And to this day, the lady, like the people who bought this house are still alive. And to this day, if you go ask her about this, she'll tell you about this, that they woke up to the sound of breathing and movement in their bedroom at like 3 a.m. They leaned over and turned on the bedside light, and the doll was standing at the edge of the bed with a kitchen knife in its hand.
Oh, fuck this.
Oh, right.
Oh, no.
I'd read somewhere that I'd heard a few different places, and I couldn't really confirm it, but I'd heard that Robert the Doll was actually the inspiration for the Child's Play movies, which had Chucky in them.
So.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. And incidentally, this is totally just an aside, but it seems that all these sort of pop culture haunted dolls are popular dolls that were released at certain points in history. So Chucky is a My Buddy doll, is what he was called.
Yeah. Okay.
But Robert the doll was not. He was like
some sort of spooky German doll.
Yeah, and if you look up pictures of Robert the doll, he's pretty unsettling. He's in a little sailor suit. That was not apparently part of the doll when it was
maybe released. That was something that somebody sewed up for. I'd heard that Eugene Otto, also Robert the boy, often wore a little sailor suit, so maybe somebody just custom made that for him.
I think at the time, actually, his parents did that. I think they got the doll a little sailor suit because he was always wearing a little sailor suit.
Well, isn't that cute?
Yeah, so he had a little doll of himself,
fun.
basically.
Maybe if we were to hop over to like Munich, Germany or something like that and look into all kinds of spooky ghost stories surrounding dolls, we'll be seeing a lot more of this doll.
Maybe.
I'm very upset that, they buy this doll, and then suddenly it's just, if anything, demon. Like, what the hell? Why is this?
I mean, it's.
I hate it.
I wouldn't say it directly killed 2 people, but
it played a part in their deaths.
It was suspiciously closely linked to the deaths of 2 people, and numerous people have said very weird things about it. That this doll just had a strange feeling. All the servants said that they would see it blink, they would see its head turn.
Why? It's weird black little beady eyes.
Yeah, it's got those.
Why
weird
do you
little beady
think
eyes,
that I do not? I didn't want to look up any of these fucking things. I know when I edit this together, I'm gonna have to add pictures of these creepy fucking things. I'm so upset by it.
Man, I'm so thankful Simon did so much research.
Oh my
and
God,
I are looking like bumbling ding dongs this
he
time
is
around.
Carrying it hard.
Sorry,
man.
folks, but
okay.
We're having fun.
I feel bad that I didn't do more Annabelle research. Actually.
Honestly, I'm listening to all the stories you're telling me.
I think Robert's spookier than Annabelle. Robert is spookier than Annabelle, and Robert is also like... Robert has considerably more what I would call actual evidence.
Yes.
Because if we want to get deep into Annabelle, something that is like disappointing and kind of a killjoy thing is that like the Warrens have been so deeply, like they've had a lot of things kind of debunked as like trick photography and all kinds of stuff like that. But one of the things that really kind of counts against them is, I guess there was an author at one point who had to write some sort of there's a book about, there's a movie called The Haunting in Connecticut, and I don't know a whole heck of a lot about the case or anything like that, but the book that I guess inspired that film, whether that was also called that, was written by this author who had to be in contact with this family called, I'm gonna fuck the name up because of course I don't remember, but I think it was like the Snedebaker family or something like that. He had to be in contact with this family, and he also had to talk to the Warrens because of course this was one of their cases. So he went and he talked to this family, and this family's accounts of what had happened in this haunting were all over the damn place. And he went back and talked to Ed Warren. You know what? It's not Elizabeth Warren at all, dude. It's Lorraine.
Oh, I am the worst.
It is.
Hey, folks, if you're still listening, it's Lorraine Warren.
Okay.
Not Ed
bad.
Warren. Or not,
and
not
by
Elizabeth
our
Warren.
bad, I mean my bad.
Nah, I love
because
the
my
confidence that you got that
brain
with.
is mush. Well, what did we talk about in the first episode? Yeah. If you say something with enough confidence, people believe you.
This is not our finest hour.
I like it. No, this isn't our finest.
This is a
but boy,
Sleepy Boy podcast.
Yeah, this is welcome to the Sleepy Boy hour.
Yeah, we're all a little tired today.
Anyway, goes and talks to Ed Warren, married to Lorraine Warren, about this case, the haunting in Connecticut, and he goes like, "Hey, like these people, their accounts were all over the place. Like, what's going on about that?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, those people are nuts. Like, and I have the quote somewhere. Let me see exactly what he said here. Yeah, he said, so he was talking to Ed Warren, and he said, like, those people are basically crazy. And the quote that I have from Ed is, use what works and make up the rest. Make it up and make it scary.
No.
Okay. So that kind of, that doesn't really count in their favor for credibility. Doesn't necessarily debunk their entire career. Like, how could they be doing this if they didn't believe in it?
Yeah.
Or if there wasn't some sort of evidence? They had to, at some point, be getting some sort of results to have the level of fame that they did.
Yeah.
Spencer,
but that's, like, pretty wild.
Elizabeth Warren is a politician.
Oh, is she the head of the Green Party?
Oh my God! Yes,
in
she
the
totally
States.
is.
Oh my! In the States, Elizabeth Warren.
She totally is. That's fantastic. I love how we've been talking about politicians.
If you look up pictures of her, just as spooky as any ghost.
Oh man!
I am an absolute idiot today.
So where are we going with this, folks?
Okay.
My God.
Well, yeah. So I mean, we had some creepy doll. The experiences that we looked up.
Yeah.
There was one that I found that I thought was interesting. It's not creepy. I just wanted to say this. So there's a doll called the Stargazer Lottie doll. She was the first doll to go to space.
Oh, that's
pretty cool.
I thought that was cool.
Do you think they sent a ghost out there with her? Do you think she's a haunted doll out in space, just bouncing around a capsule or something?
Maybe she became haunted while in space.
By a space ghost,
maybe.
So one of my friends collects haunted dolls.
And now, why would someone do something like that?
Because they're into the paranormal and spooky stuff. Because we even talked, like, while we were talking about it, just in our own private, there is a want for haunted dolls.
Yeah,
people
there's a big
want
demand.
to collect them.
There's a huge industry for this.
So
on
my
Etsy,
friend has about 6 or 7 of them.
Did you know that the the doll that Annabelle is based off of, that doll sold for almost $400,000 at auction.
Are you kidding me?
The doll that the movie is based off of, or the actual Raggedy Ann?
One of the actual Raggedy Anns, not specifically Annabelle, but like one of the original.
That's
Raggedy
so
Ann
kooky
dolls,
because original Raggedy Ann dolls I still find at thrift stores and stuff like that. Somebody must have been real hyped up on this.
I'm pretty sure. Maybe I'm wrong. We're pretty tired today.
Maybe
I'm thinking of a different doll, but I'm pretty sure it was that one. I'm pretty sure it was Raggedy Ann. I think it was one of the originals, like one of the first ever produced, and it sold. Yeah, it's
that
over
makes
$400,000.
See, that makes sense, but also that still doesn't make me like it anymore.
Oh no.
Like any doll, like across the board, it's just, even action figures to a certain extent are unsettling.
Man, I like me some action figures.
I know you do.
That about me. I got a spooky
But I mean, like,
collection
if they're based on like people.
I like. I'm a big fan of Hulk Hogan action figures.
You're a wrestling fan.
I got some wrestling figures. Are you spooked by those?
No.
But I don't know that they'd add to the ambiance.
No, definitely not. But like with anything, it's just,
listen here, brother.
Just go surreal, brother.
I know. I've been telling you guys this from the beginning. So at this point, I think this is brother. Like the most I've heard, or the closest I've heard you say, I think this is legit.
Yeah,
like, this is the closest.
This one is hard to debunk.
I'm turning you guys one episode at a time.
Oh boy.
We knew it was going to happen.
This one is, like, there are criteria that I look for in something that is believable, but perhaps not commonly held beliefs. Like I like to think I'm a man of science, which means that you have to have enough
empirical proof.
Yeah, you have to have evidence. You have to be able to recreate findings, and you have to have enough people saying these things. Now, this is not exactly a scientific method.
It's not quite empirical.
It's not quite that. But I feel like when you have enough people, especially spanning generations,
that is the biggest thing, right?
Is
if you have enough people saying the exact same stuff.
Yeah, it's like where there's smoke, there's fire. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Man, you just took those words right in my mouth, and I love it.
Well, even last week, it was higher than the week before.
Yep.
We were just like, oh yeah,
that is true.
There's enough people saying the same thing. So like, I'm feeling pretty confident right now here, boys. I'm slowly turning.
Especially when it comes to the Robert doll. Like, and this is, I think, for me, would be the one that I would fixate on. The other ones, I think, are perhaps more superstition and stories. But the Robert doll is weird. Like that's weird. And there are so many people across this story who report the same thing. I mean, the turnover rate for their servants was so high because they were terrified of this doll.
Yeah.
Like that
tends to be a problem.
Maybe they were just really bad employers. But
it's more fun to say that they were scared of the doll.
For sure. And all these people seem like some of these people were interviewed and they said the reason for leaving was this doll terrified them. Like that
on the exit interview, they put because they were doing that back in like the early. When was this?
Maybe interviewed is the wrong word.
Yeah,
like, they were
I get you.
Asked about it, you know. Like,
they were asked like, "Hey, what's going on here? This is kind of weird."
And like people in the neighborhood had stories about this. Not even people who lived in the home or who worked in the home. There were just people who lived nearby who were like, "Yeah, that thing's creepy." Jeez. And then when you have like the death of the aunt after she tried to separate them,
and the suicide of the
suicide of the wife after trying to separate them, like supposedly this doll drove her crazy, and people didn't necessarily believe her that this was happening, and she took her own life because people didn't believe that this thing was messing with her.
Oh my goodness.
And then when you have it was boxed up, and you hear the sounds and the commotion and. Oh, there was one thing I didn't say earlier, actually. Sometimes the mother, while little Robert was playing with the doll, they would hear these two voices, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes she would sneak up to the door, and she would put her ear up to the door and listen. And she said that it sounded
like somebody else,
like someone else, and that she would burst into the room. And sometimes he seemed unsettled by the doll. Ooh. Like this thing, like he didn't
like the doll was saying some pretty weird.
Yeah, like it was almost like threatening him.
Freaking goosebumps right now, dude. I hate it.
And then when you have after all this, years and years go by, and another family reports this very similar things, like in fact the same things, and especially the last incident where they wake up and the doll's got a knife in their bedroom.
It's like I'm done with
Robert. They didn't put it there. Nobody put it there.
Goodness.
This family didn't have servants. This wasn't like a wealthy family. This was just a normal family. Everyone would have been asleep at 3 a.m. Maybe someone was playing a terrible prank.
Could be.
But they don't. Yeah. They don't say that. Like the woman I forget her name.
Well, that's all right.
But this woman to this day, and the husband as well, to this day, they attest that this thing attacked them on multiple occasions. They attest that this thing was an ominous presence in their home, and that they tried to get rid of it, and it didn't like it, and the doll tried to get rid of them.
Yeah.
Jeez. And then they donated it to a museum, and it's been there since.
It's nice that they were able to just get rid of it like that. So it was affixed to the doll entirely, and it wasn't like in the house. They didn't have to come do a big. Yeah, that's. Well, at least we don't know that.
We don't know that, but still
ceremony.
But at this point, Robert was dead.
Yeah.
So. Right. I mean, I feel like he had a real strong bond with this thing, and I feel like if Robert had been alive, that would have gone differently. And it did go differently when they tried to separate them initially.
Yeah, you can't separate them, Roberts.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, they don't want that. They don't want to be separated.
Jeez.
Yeah. That whole story just makes me so uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I didn't really expect this when I started researching this. I expected this just to be like people think dolls are creepy.
This is stupid.
Yeah, haunted dolls. Why is Brett have an irrational fear of this?
This is the uncanny valley.
And now you're like, I get it.
With Robert anyway.
With Robert anyway. Like I said, I do still think dolls are innately creepy because they don't have human emotions, and they're just weird, and I don't know.
Now imagine that standing at the foot of your bed with a knife.
Exactly.
Now you see why I'm like, man, fuck
Especially
this.
Robert. That's a creepy looking
Oh,
doll.
God.
Yeah.
I am not looking forward to putting it in the video.
Robert, for me, goes towards the other end of the spectrum where it's not exactly humanoid, where it's weird.
It's very abstract.
It's abstract. He's got those I keep fixating on this, but those tiny little eyes.
The beady eyes are very unsettling.
Are creepy.
He's this
and then
weird grayish brown tinge to him.
and these days he's so worn that it's just freaky.
Well, and I mean, some of the video, like the top 5 video that I sent you there, it'll be in the description, obviously. Yeah. The video, the first one is this clown that this guy, like someone's friends give him this supposedly haunted clown doll.
Oh my God.
And he sets up a camera and he has it just sitting there, and it's like a 24-hour kind of feed.
Right.
But at 3 a.m, because the doll's like looking down.
Why is it always 3 a.m?
I know, because it's the witching hour.
Yeah.
That's why. But this doll's looking down, and then it just slowly tilts its head up and looks at the camera.
Oh God.
And I'm just like, okay, that would be very hard to fake.
Yeah.
In this situation.
It would be.
But that being said,
it's probably doable. But
it's doable, but it would be very
It'd be
difficult.
a lot of effort.
Just sitting behind there the whole time.
So what do we like? Maybe what do we think? Are we going to judge just Robert the doll?
Yeah, why don't we
just assign a value to?
Why don't we just do Robert the doll this time around, because this is what we had the most information on.
Yeah.
As far as haunted dolls as a whole go, I fully believe that there are very haunted dolls. 10 out of 10 for me on this one.
Sure.
It makes me so uncomfortable.
Yeah, I would say dolls just have an innate ability to make you feel uncomfortable, and that alone makes them freaky. In general, I wouldn't say dolls are haunted, but in the case of Robert,
what do you give Robert out of a 10?
Robert, that's gonna be I don't know what to give this. It's gonna be high.
Yeah,
it's gonna be high. Like,
I'm making them a believer, folks. I'm making them a believer.
Robert the doll it's a unique story.
It's a very
for sure.
Unique story.
It's not the normal.
No. And it's just so unsettling. If we're just talking Robert the doll, oh boy, I gotta give this at least a 7.
Yeah, I think I'm giving Robert a 7 too.
Yeah, I'm going full 10.
Like maybe even 8. Like this is like, there are criteria here that have been met about people across all walks of life saying this across multiple generations.
Yeah, and people who weren't like already accustomed to it and aware of the story. It's not just a couple, alleged psychic investigators whose credibility has been questioned.
Exactly.
It's a pile of people.
This is a lot of people saying that a lot of weird stuff has gone on with this
doll. A lot
of
people with literally nothing to gain
by
saying that's the difference, right?
Nobody made any damn money off Robert.
Yeah, exactly. If you're making money off it, then you can always be a little suspect of the story. But the fact that there's no money to be made at all from this, and all these people can corroborate the same story. It's just like, this is too, for me, it's like 10. Like Robert's a 10. It scares the crap out of me.
This is absolutely like the most convincing thing that I've researched in the case of a haunting or some sort of,
and I think it'll probably be the
possession.
most convincing for a while.
I think so. Like I said, there's something I want to talk about in the future. I'm not going to spoil it here.
No, of course not.
That for me, I think is going to be like a solid 10 out of 10. We'll see. But this, so far, this is
it's as close as I can get you guys to admitting.
This is the most convincing thing I've ever seen.
This is the best victory I've gotten thus far.
How does it feel?
Oh God, I feel like I'm walking on a rainbow right now, but I am terrified because we talked about dolls, and now I'm gonna have to look up all these dolls so I can put them in the video so people can see these nice, terrifying dolls.
Nice is not the word I would use.
But I'm so scared. I don't want to, but God. I'm gonna do it for the people. Oh man.
Well, this has been Do Ghosts Be Real.
Yeah, let's. I'll link, or I'll talk about our social media, all that stuff before we go. And so, if you have any stories, anything like that, why don't you send us an email at Do Ghosts Be Real? The link, everything will be in the bio. Follow our TikTok. Do Ghosts Be Real podcast, and our Instagram at Do.Ghosts.Be.Real. This has been Brett.
I'm Spencer. Sorry for the extreme low energy on this one from me, and thank you to Simon for just carrying the weight.
Yeah, you killed it today, man.
Yeah, no worries.
We appreciate that.
And I'm Simon, and we hope you enjoyed our show today.